Hi and welcome everyone. Today I am extra grateful and excited to introduce to you the wonderful Ascension Guide and Dragon Emissary, Araya and Ra, whose life mission now and going forward seems to be helping humanity, first of all, understand and then integrate many aspects of incredible dragon frequencies that manifest as beings. And it really feels like the time has come for us to have these conversations more and more. I certainly see the shift in my community. And over the last many years, when I worked as a QHHT practitioner, holding space for regression hypnosis and witnessing, often very spontaneously, people regressing to a time and place where they met their dragon guide, and they went on to different star systems and sometimes even different galaxies, just being guided to massive expansion of consciousness, or others became dragon themselves, and that created a lot of powerful activations within their own being, within their own DNA. And then through soul realignment sessions, looking at soul records, and certainly lately now in galactic astrology, I see that theme coming up more and more, and it just keeps knocking at the door. People keep emailing me asking about dragon beings, dragon energies connected to different star systems, different archetypes. So there's just huge question marks, and people are so hungry to know more. So I'm deeply grateful that I was recently inspired to reach out to Araya and Ra, and that you agreed to meet us today and answer some of the many questions that we prepared for you today. Thank you so much and welcome.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. You know, anytime I can come forward and talk about dragons, for those that are ready to hear their message, hear what they're bringing, it gets me very excited, because it's a massive part of our ascension journey, of our completion process, because they've been here since the beginning. So anytime that there's an opportunity, it's the dragons, they won't let me say no. They pull me in and say, all right, this is another group that's ready, and let's bring the energy through in this way. And how do we share that in a way that can be heard and received? And as you're noting, when you feel the dragons come in, it's a powerhouse energy. It is not for the faint of heart. It is not for those that aren't ready. And if you're listening to this, if you're catching a replay, wherever you are finding this, it's because you are ready. And the dragons are, as you said, tapping on your shoulder. Don't wait for the frying pan to finally be the way that they get your attention. Let them come in. And as they do, what can you feel about yourself in that, wow, if I'm ready to have a dragon experience, or there's dragons energies around me, or I have information coming to me somehow about dragons connected to what I'm doing, what does that indicate for my own journey? And it's indicating not just a readiness, but a ramping up in your vibrational field. Because when the dragons come in, not only are they a very powerful force to be reckoned with as far as energetic dynamic. One of the questions was about where do they hail from? What dimensional realms are they within, whatever. And if you imagine that the dragon realms are all the way up in about the 22nd to the 25th dimensional octave, and I use dimension and octave interchangeably. So that frequency bandwidth is very much higher than where we are here. But they have a step down process that I'll discuss more in detail to bring that energy to us in a phase where we can actually interface with it. That said, if you're ready to meet the dragons, or have that part of you woken up, that's because you're ready for that. It's a clear indicator and marker of your own progress on your journey, and a knowing that be ready for some quantum leaps. Be ready to move forward, not just in little breadcrumbs, but giant steps up, up, up vibrationally. Because when the dragons come in, they work. One thing I always say is they don't cut corners. They don't leave anything out. They don't shortcut, but they're super efficient. And you'll find almost like hyperspeed level of work of removing densities, old energies that have just still left in your field, anything residual, they're going to bring to the surface and make you look at it, which we get excited about the high energies. But at the same time, with those high energies come the scourging of our deepest shadow, of our deepest stuff left in the closet, the skeletons that we haven't seen. And they're going to come in your face. So be ready to sort of be confronted with your shadows, the mirrors you haven't wanted to look at, the things in your past or pasts. Doesn't matter if it's this lifetime or others, they're going to bring it up because recurring themes are part of the soul process of cleansing and clearing that.
Such a gift in it, even though it's not an easy journey sometimes, but at the end, you always see it as a major gift and a blessing and a grace at the same time. So,
yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, do you want me to go with all the questions that your readers?
So I have a variety of questions here, quite a spectrum from kind of beginners mindset, newbies who are really just opening up to these frequencies, and then quite advanced community members that are working with dragon energies for a while, and they are really working with multi-galactic dragon beings at this point. So I'm glad that we have this nice mixture, so we can accommodate a different spectrum of viewers here. So one of the most common questions that comes a lot is, are they connected? Or let's kind of clarify for once and for all that dragons and Dracos, reptilian beings, are not the same thing. Would you like to comment on that? Because normally when in galactic astrology, when people see Draco, Thuban, and we'll talk about that separately as well, they always get so scared, even though they can feel and sense that it's these ancient dragon energies really that they are calibrating, rather than the reptilian Dracos that are also associated with Draco Thuban. Please, if you can.
Right. And that's a really common question. And it is really important to clarify, because there is a part of us that likes to judge, separate, put up a wall of resistance, or push that what's perceived as dark, negative, evil. And that reptilian interface is really a big, I would say it's a leftover trauma in most of our systems because of the hijacking of this system. And knowing, first of all, it was intentional, it was part of the plan, they're playing a role, that there's dark light and white light, that they all come from what I call Mother, Father, God, Creator, Source energy, whatever name you want to use for that. That energy is experiencing itself through all of these opposites in this universe, particularly all the way down in 3D. So no, the dragons are not the same as Draco and Reptilian. But that said, a lot of us have memory banks, especially from the Orion Wars, of the drop down in frequency bandwidth in order to drop into a fully polarized dualistic reality, linear here in 3D on Earth, 3D matter being formed. The fifth dimensional framework that opened to that, where for me, the Orion belt holds the fifth dimensional in place. It was the gateway in creation and bringing the energies down through that. And so as that was being created, the Orion Wars were brought about by those reptilian, what I consider Draco forces, because the Draco Constellation itself, in my knowing or my memory bank and my experience in connecting with that energy, is still inhabited by the reptilian races. That was part of the original takeover. That was part of their implantation into this system. So when I talk about Orion Wars, that often triggers a lot of things for people that will start clearing and coming up as information, as memory bank. And the dragons were and are the grid keepers, the matrix keepers of this entire universe. So if you imagine, like, you've got this beautiful flower of life behind you, if you imagine the universal grid like that, from the edges of this universe all the way into where we sit, because it's from our perspective always that we're looking out. All of those intersecting points are a grid point that a dragon has volunteered in service to be guarding. He is the guardian of, or she is the guardian of. And in this, many of those were in place and being guarded when these forces came and attacked from behind. Now, one of the things about dragons is they can never attack. It's not part of the unconditional love that they hold as a frequency bandwidth. They are the most loving beings that I've ever experienced next to Mother, Father, God. And it's because they come from that very high realm. That doesn't mean they're not intimidating. So with that, they knew the attack was going to be coming. They didn't have specific time placement with it because everything operates outside of time in the higher dimensional plane. But when that happened, getting hit from behind, they can only defend a space. They can repel and defend, but many fell because of that. And it was about the drop down energetically. So we have this big negative about the Draco reptilian because of the role they have played. So as we heal this template, why would the Draco system come in? Why would that constellation be part of your field? Why is that a constant trigger? Because that part being healed is a part of a lot of our process. So that said, with the dragons are not the Draco, but in that war, there were many who remembered being leaders, commanders, dragon commanders. They had legions under them of dragons. My whole body's tingling on this. So a lot of people watching are going to be hit by this. Watching your legions potentially being tortured, killed, maimed, destroyed, imprisoned, slaved, all of those pieces were all of the different things that happened. And some of those dragons went on the side of the Draco, like they went as slaves, but then they started befriending. They took on their culture, they took on their stuff. So they became in alliance with them. So there are actually dragons in the Draco system working with reptilians. Some of those are our actual own incarnations. Some of those were dragons that were sent as emissaries to infiltrate, like CIA, it's like spies of some kind, right? So once they infiltrated, some stayed pure-hearted, others got sort of what you might call converted to that energy field and got lost. We are all healing that piece because we are all of it. And so in that, don't put up a wall of resistance, just find a way to look at the information without judgment. Look at those beings and see, all right, where does that hold my heart? Where do I have some part of me captive or ensconced in that energy that is now ready to come to the light of day, that's now ready to come home to itself? So that's a little bit, hopefully, that will clarify that Draco system for your sphere of people that are really close to what you're doing. And in that, knowing, all right, dragon realms way up high, all the way down, we have dragons in every bandwidth. They are here as guides, guardians, and emissaries for us. So bringing that in, I think one of the questions that is in your field is, do the dragons choose us? What is it that makes the dragon appear to us? Is that like, are we calling out to them on some level, or are the dragons actually choosing us? And knowing this is a free will universe, they cannot come and put themselves in your way if you haven't asked for it, right? So this is where dragons are showing up. There's a reason. I'm calling for it on a soul level. Might not be conscious, mental body conscious level yet, but you've called out. There's also, if you're connected to the dragons, you have within you genetic coding, part of your DNA, crystalline key codes that are meant to wake up at a specific point in this game, I'll call it, to activate you back into that remembrance. And as vibrational levels have raised, a lot of that is waking up for people now because they're getting to that place where those key codes are unleashing in their body and in their energy bodies. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's time. And it's at that point that it's actually a solo call out, have those guides come in that are dragon and wake up and start working with you, tapping on the shoulder, being present. And oftentimes they don't necessarily, they can stand in or replace our angelic guides, because I do believe and have experienced that each of us as human format has an angelic guide and guardian along with us from birth. So then the dragons come in. Those angelic guardians will step back and let the dragons do their work because they can see your soul imprint and know, all right, this is what needs to happen next. You might have ET or Starseed guides come in. A lot of us have memory banks from those Orion and Sirius and Pleiadian star belts that are connected to that dissension of energies down, that then we go, oh, well, why do I have Orion in my chart? Why do I have Sirius showing up? Why do I feel so connected to the Pleiades or Arcturus? So for me, when I had all this memory come in, I originally on my journey before the dragons were as present as they are now in my journey, before the book came out in 2008, I had been experiencing reading, and my angelic guides were like leading me forward with all these books that were coming my way, which is how our journey happens, right? Get the breadcrumbs, like put this in their face, see if they'll read this. Okay. So I had been reading a lot of Pleiadian stuff by Barbara Marciniak, the Return of the Bird Tribes in particular, hit a chord. It was like in black and white, everything that I had been feeling but couldn't put into words. And so then I had to reconcile, all right, well, then the dragons come in. So if I know I'm dragon, hands down, what was the starseed part? What was that connection to the Pleiades about? Why is my home star always been Orion? Why is it the only thing I always orient to in the sky? And it's because you have had lifetimes in those systems, that in the creation of this dropping down from the edges of our universe, which I look at Andromeda as the very edge of our universe, as a 12th dimensional sort of enclosure for this realm. So dropping through 11th, 10th, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, that Orion holds the 5th, Sirius holds the 6th, and 7 through 9 is held in the Pleiades. In that dropping down with dragons that came to seed this universe and to hold it in place, we all came from, not all of us, but a lot have come from the dragon realms. Those were one of the original realms created by Source. That's my memory of it. If you have a different memory, that's okay. But I know that it was one of the first created, and they're very, very ancient beings. They have the knowledge, the know-how, and the willingness and service and the level of unconditional love to come and work as service project for universes. So in that stepping down, every one of those realms and dimensional frequency bandwidths had to be created. All right, here's 9, 8, and 7. Let's put in these that now we know as the Pleiades. 6 bandwidth. And as those were being created, whether we were in dragon body, which at some points we were, or taking on a star body to start dropping in that closer to human format template, we have memory bank of being there. We might still have aspects of ourselves in incarnational bodies there in those systems. Maybe out in Lyra, maybe out in Draco. All of the systems we have expansive possibility to be incarnate within the way we fractal out our soul level. So bringing that down, this is why I believe we all have these markers that we draw to certain star systems, or they show up in our chart, partly as those triggers to wake us up, but partly because some incarnational aspect of us may still be there, maybe in starseed form, maybe in dragon body. You will have memories. I have memory of myself in other dragon bodies than my main dragon form. So all of this starts coming in, and it's confusing. And it makes you sit and go, well, how does that reconcile together? I'll be honest, I was raised Christian. I was raised in a church. God was all, Jesus was all. And I had to sit for a long time with all of the information that I'd been given from all these different, more spiritual new age thought forms, and especially the dragons, because that was home base. Where does that reconcile with God as a being in my life? Because the church wasn't going to say, well, dragons are cool. And there's going to be a lot of your people that have that, whether it's Catholic, Protestant, doesn't matter, background of where do the dragons fit with God? And I feel like this is, I don't talk about this often, so it's interesting that this is coming up to share, because I literally sat for almost 4 years in a space of repelling all the dragon stuff, repelling all the other teachings that I had, and just saying, you know what, I'm going to focus on being human, because I need these pieces to find where they fit. I need all this stuff to be on the shelves behind me, and let it trickle together, and let my bodies, all my energy bodies, my mental, my emotional bodies, integrate that information in a way that's cohesive for me. Because right now they don't reconcile, they don't fit together. And I'm having a hard time with that. And so I put my heart out to God. I put my heart out to the dragons. I said, show me where you fit. And then finally one day I had this voice of God coming in saying, I created the dragons. Of course they're part of me. I created everything. And I'm experiencing myself through it all. So does that open the gateway for you to finally find your freedom within that and keep going with it? Because this is my journey.
If I may interrupt here, I was so glad when you connected archangels to certain dragons. So there is Archangel Michael connected to a black dragon.
Black dragon.
Yeah. When I personally had experience of spontaneous integration of Michael archetype, I think it was either last year or the year before. It's hard to keep track of time when so much is happening, but it was within a space of 3 months. I had activation of Michael, then Melchizedek, and then Metatron. I, at that time, did not think of them as dragons, but when I experienced Michael coming in and I became maybe half a mile or a mile large in my awareness, really into the sky, I could feel the scales coming in, just so many ripple, and the sense of not just Michael and the wings and the mightiness of it, the sovereignty of it, but also the dragon frequency in it. It was like one and the same. You couldn't tell the difference between the two. So when I recently saw you putting these two together, I just had so many goosebumps. It's like, yeah, that makes sense. And then with Melchizedek and Metatron, I didn't necessarily have such a strong sense of the dragon, but nevertheless, they were exceptional activations. So
yeah, and that's a really important thing to bring in, and it's perfect timing with talking about like my own like reconciliation with where does God fit in, where do the angels fit in, where do the cosmic angelic realms fit in, because I have these other angelic guides, I have these other angelic memories, and with that, so with the black dragon, the white dragon, and the crystal dragon in particular, their connection with the archangelic Michael, Melchizedek, and Metatron respectively, I didn't even realize until probably in the last year, and I've been working with them since 2003, that they are one and the same, because I always had Michael and I had the black dragon, and they were like, hand in hand, cohorts, they work together. But realizing the higher showing of their twin flame, like how they actually are part of the same being, they are all of that there are some that need to see the archangel, and there are some that need to see the dragon. Mm-hmm. And dragons are shapeshifters. Dragons can take any form because of their higher level dynamic vibrationally. And so they will take the form that you need to have to bring in. But they also carry that vibrational doorway. So the crystal in particular is important. And it's interesting that this conversation is coming up with the dragons that wanted to be present visually in the field with the canvases. That I always have different ones because I've got the entire oracle deck to choose from. I've got the black and white spiraling, and I've got the diamond, which is a higher octave of the crystal. And those three being our gateway to the 0 point in order to move through the ascension doorway into the full quantum field. These are the potent energies right now. So Michael, Melchizedek, and Metatron, the black, the white, and the crystal dragons in particular are going to be powerful to work with right now. We had an activation with my Dragon Hearts. I have an ongoing group that everyone has completed the program the last 4 years. We meet every month, and sometimes missions come up and activations come up, and then we all come in, whoever initiates it, and we support that. And so we had a very powerful one yesterday that was a completion doorway. It happened to be on the 7-7. And there's pieces coming into play of literally coming into cohesion universally. There were big pieces in the grids put in place or reinstated. And there's a question somewhere about energies being infiltrated or pulled off track, but everything's been reinstated now. So when I tuned into the energy this morning, I kept getting transparence. And I said, well, I always dress the energy, so I don't have any transparent clothes. I don't think everybody wants transparent clothes. So I said, all right, what holds that transparency is the union of the black and white. That's the first division out, and it's the final step returning home into the crystal and then the diamond frequency. And so the black and white drew, and here they are with that. But going and circling back around to the archangels, there's always questions, well, how are they connected to the angelic realms? Because sometimes I have angels come in and there's this dragon energy around them. The seraphim are a dragon race. Not a lot of people know that. They are one of the angelic realms that were specifically created at that octave. So an angelic realm doesn't have to be an angelic humanic looking form or human looking form, right? Humanoid. there are angelic realms of all creatures, and the angelic realms are based on levels of love. Vibrational frequency matches to levels of unconditional love. And so in those bandwidths, all these different ones being created, the seraphim were actually created as a dragon race. So are the Elohim. But the Elohim are much like the archangelic, but almost taking it up a notch vibrationally, where they hold not as much form, so you can perceive them as either, but there are many dragons within them. But the Elohim are another, that they're a race, almost like a council that gets called forth in your mastery, in your soul level expansion over eons, that you gain a level of mastery and love that puts you in this bandwidth that is then known as Elohim. And this is where there's a lot of confusion about it, because they're very high principles. It's like trying to bring through technologies that exist in the higher planes that we're almost ready to receive here, and you don't even have the vocabulary for it when the information's coming. So those realms are like, we're starting to touch in, we're starting to remember that, and those codes will start to drop through and decode for you if that information is part of your field, if that's making any sense.
Yeah, really, really well said. I have to say, for those that have an issue with labels, dragon, archangels, star seeds, whatever, in essence, it's frequencies and sacred geometry and sounds and colors. So you can drop all that, and it comes through sacred geometry and colors and sounds. But there are many who deeply resonate with the key words, key codes of dragon or archangel. So we are, embracing different perspectives of one and the same creation.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things I love how you describe that, because for me, our soul signature. So a lot of people say, what do you mean you're a dragon? What is that? How can you be a dragon? And for me, what it means is that your very first soul level incarnation, whether it's here on earth as a human or up in the rainbow realms or out in the Lyran system, at some point you were brought through as an energy, as a soul, by Mother, Father, God, through whatever beings that helped co-create that. And that soul level form has a resonance that you decode into our language and verbiage as, for me, dragon. So in that, when you tap into the soul level, I perceive dragon energy. We have come to recognize that as a specific 3D form visually, which are like these on my walls, but that's not necessarily their form in that higher vibration. And that the soul itself, how we communicate telepathically, and this is what we're moving into, the dragons are opening us back into our full telepathic communion bodies, is by recognizing, why do I recognize you as a soul? Or how do I recognize you when you send me a telepathic message in the higher realms? It's because it comes through and I either perceive your color, your geometry, your mantra, or your sound stream that is your wavelength pattern. And what I've come to learn and realize is, over time, souls get more complex. Beginner soul, very old soul. Their geometries, their colors become more complex also. So all of this is part of the perception and remembering when you get those bits and pieces of your true self, and the whole journey that we're on is to wake up to who we be at the core, who is my soul level self. And for me, that's dragon. Those that are drawn into my field for work are also dragon. They match that and they find me. They don't even know how. And all of a sudden they're like, I don't know why, but there's something that I need to get from you.
I have to say, you reminded me today of my last QHHT session when I was regressed by a dear friend of mine, where just after I cleared major past life trauma, the next scene was space wars and lines of white dragons, dark dragons coming in, and that point of attack. And I never actually really integrated that experience fully. I didn't really know, but everything you shared earlier, I was just going through that and I saw that, and it's just, wow, that came through for me, I think. And many others, as you say, there are so many. And what I was shown in that experience is that the blackness or the darkness that kept pushing and pushing, and we kept holding for so long, protecting what we had. What I was shown in that experience is that darkness is leaving. It didn't really occur as integration. Maybe I'll experience that at some point now, but in that moment, this was a year and a half ago, the dark dragon chose to walk away and go back to wherever he came from. So
Yeah.
do you feel that's more like a personal internal experience where I feel no longer the threat is there? Or because I wonder, should it be more about integration of the two? Or maybe that actually bridges nicely to one of the viewers' question was that they hear rumors in the spiritual community that Draco Constellation and the entire universe is being reclaimed by the original organic mother, father, creator, which comes hand in hand with these archetypal dragon energies. So I wonder that actually could align with that, where the darkness is leaving.
Yeah, and when you see me do this, that's full body goosies when we're on track. Like, pay attention what's being said. This is truth being shared. This is exactly the message that needs to be heard and come through. So with that, yes, it's a personal integration, but everything is also on the macro level. So one thing that we have to start realizing about our journey is everything that we experience through the law of attraction, as we move into alignment again with the truth and the universal absolute laws, that micro macro scaling is all the way down to the cell in your body, the individual molecule, and biologically, I'm not remembering all the terms, but all the way out to macro level, not just universe, but multiverse. So it is being integrated, but at the same time, that is also being reclaimed. And we term it reclaiming because in the division, we saw it being taken away. Our perception is it was taken away. That was in divine perfection. As it's reclaimed, it's actually the unifying and integrating of those pieces coming together, which allows us to see what we need to see as the dark walking away. And it's just about our mental body being able to process the information. But when we feel the energy of it, just like I said earlier, coming into today is about transparency. It's the black and the white, and this merge into 0 point doorway at a higher level. And that for us, we might put the verbiage reclaiming, but it's really about merging into union.
What I have to slide in, what it felt like in that entire experience is that we have learned so much through holding that space and under the attack of the darkness. We have integrated and learned so much about that in contrast. We have now integrated everything that we learned, and we no longer need that darkness to be teaching us that
exactly
about who we really are. So it feels like that. It's not that they got fed up. It's we have integrated, upgraded, realized, and embody now everything that experience gave us, and it's no longer relevant. That's what it feels like. So
yeah, we don't need the mirror there to look into anymore of the darkness.
Yeah.
And so is it receding? Did they walk away, or did it just finally seep into the mist or the void to be reclaimed by the void? And that's actually what the energetic mission yesterday was, coming back into the clearing of the void space and reclaiming it, or attuning it to the original vibration that is the mother creative energy, because that has been hijacked in the inverted reality matrix that has been created. But it was all intentional. And the other piece here that's really important, when we step into the unconditional love, that the dragons are here to show us and remind us how to do that. How do we step into unconditional love? How do we step out of expectation, judgment, putting up walls of resistance? When we see and feel that, knowing each one of us has played every single role on the board. We played every dark master, we played light master, we played the middle guy that was just like standing there on the sidelines watching. We played all the roles. So in that knowing, in that higher wisdom perspective, when we look at the world game right now, and we see those that are still challenging, bringing chaos, bringing what we consider darkness, evil, negative agendas, they are playing a divine role. They're playing it perfectly. They are still of a dark light that has to find its way back into itself. They maybe haven't woken up yet, but the more space we hold and the more of us that move into that space of embrace as that role, they can drop their role too. It's like watching characters on stage that can drop their costume because it's no longer needed, because we're able to love it so much, because we love ourselves so much that all of a sudden, oh, we don't need those actors in the play. And then they can shift. But if we keep throwing stones, which is our judgments, our perceptions of them, our negative words about them, it's going to keep them in play. And we just got to like find the way to embrace and hold that. And that's the beauty of the dragons, is they really come in and show us what unconditional love. They remind us on a huge scale how to open that heart, and everything you do to work with them, whether you're working in the power center with a black dragon, where they're working up in the wisdom center with a white dragon or the air lineage, when that comes in, everything is about how do you take it through the heart? How do you take it through the heart? And this is why the water dragon lineage is the core, and the water dragon lineage is that sapphire, that crystal, that moving up into diamond and all the way up, which is all about union.
I have to say, diamond has been coming through very powerfully over the last few weeks. Lately,
Yeah.
Of course, I'm so glad you're mentioning it. It's definitely very present. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
it's because we're
other studies too.
Moving into our crystalline state. We really started that about 4 years ago with the beginnings of beings that were ready to really take in the crystalline coding and come back to our crystalline genetic DNA formations. And that's where all the keys and codes are held. And there's a lot of that connected to Atlantis and the dragons of Atlantis, and the unlocking of those in the last couple of years, so that as we wake up to that, well, there are crystals that have occlusions, right? We see a lot of beautiful crystals in the world, and they have a beautiful amplifying frequency, but they have thin lines in them. They have occlusions. They have smoky bits. They're not perfect yet. So even moving into our crystal, we're not free of occlusions yet, but we're able to actually see them clearly. When we start moving into diamond, there's no occlusions.
That's amazing.
Purity, transparent.
I love that analogy. Thank you. So you mentioned the scaling through Sirius, Orion, Pleiades, Andromeda. And as I'm looking at galactic astrology and seeing variety of many other different star systems that seem to also be quite prevalent or even coming alive more and more lately, would you agree when I say that what we witness in this lineage, there is an echo of that also in other lineages and scales throughout other star systems? Would you agree? Like Arcturus, Antares, so many others.
Yeah, the key doorways for the dragons, and this is just one of the, this is a diagram that's in the book. So in the book, The Dragon Within, this diagram often gets overlooked. People are like, oh, wow, that's interesting. But then they keep flipping on, right? The importance of that, and I've actually updated it in my programs and classes, takes you through coming through the doorway of Andromeda, Arcturus, Nibiru, also Solaris. Nibiru, Solaris, I finally had, I sat with it for a long time. I was like, why every time do I get, sometimes Nibiru is 10D, sometimes it's Solaris. They're actually one and the same. And a lot of people will have memory banks of being dragon in Nibiru or in Solaris, and it exploding. That was a planet that did not make its ascension. It actually was destroyed, almost detonated from within, because it wasn't getting on track. There's a lot of trauma in that for some people. And Solaris was the original planet. Nibiru is the sort of leftover energetic imprint of the explosion. And it took me a long time to finally have those pieces. And I was like, okay, but that's the gateway, and it will heal. Solaris will return in the fullness of her being, just like Gaia will. But Gaia's ascension is actually healing that for other planets that have not made it. And then coming down through the Pleiades, the Sirian, Orion, down to Earth. So in that, all these other star systems, like the Lyran system, for example, just to use an example, when there are dragons or beings that have wanted to communicate with us from those systems, for many years, they kept coming in almost like sideways into one of the gateways I just mentioned, and then could get in almost like the transit stream of energy to communicate with us by coming through that pathway. That pathway is almost like, oh, I'm seeing it right now. I've never realized this before. When I talk about our DNA, we have not just a double helix, it's actually a trinary helix, it's triple helix. And so when we pop into crystal, it actually goes to a 3-pointed triangular helix. That's our crystalline DNA activating. And I've always known that this was the same chain of DNA up through our universe, but I'm finally realizing it's the same DNA stranding of this universe as a larger being. And so there's the micro macro again showing itself. But in that, in order to translate information, energy, to communicate with us, they had to come into the main communication hubs. They had to come in through those and then channel down. But as we kept opening and expanding, that's no longer necessary. So all of a sudden the Lyran system could communicate directly. The Antares system can communicate directly. Some of the others, they now have direct access because we broke the chain. We broke into our own open spin, if you would, of the information because we were ready to receive it directly. We didn't need the channeling through because of being stuck still in a binary helix. If that's making sense.
I want to highlight what you said there at the beginning of that Earth's role or mission in the galactic and universal ascension is to heal, integrate, activate, upgrade herself, and be pivotal in healing and activating others. And isn't that such a theme for our current generation as well? You suffer through your trauma or not knowing, then you heal, integrate, understand, and then you feel guided to help others. And I think that's so spot on that Earth is taking on that role for others, because I can see it through the galactic astrology, how invaluable our integration of trauma from other star systems in 3D, how it is creating a ripple effect for infinite timelines. So I just want to give a shout out for that. It's powerful.
It is, and it's amazing to see that. And once you really start to comprehend what the micro macro mirroring is, then you start to see those correlations and realize, whoa, yes, we are that, which is she doing that on a larger scale, and all of these planetary bodies, because there's other systems ascending. And many of us that are part of the team here for the ascension are here because we are masters of that process from having done it in other systems. We carry the codes within us for a successful ascension process. And that is helping, when she steps into place, an entire portion of the larger multiverse grid gets lit up and usable again. That's been like a neon light in a store window that says closed, or it's just not lit up. It should say open, but it's just not plugged in. It's not lit up. And so that whole sector of the multiverse grid is actually going to come online. Like, again, referencing your flower of life behind you, if say the upper third portion of that was not the same color as the rest, and you could barely see it, there was a shadow over it, a veil over it, and all of a sudden it came up like, whoa, there it is. Now everybody can see it and interact with it and interface with it. So this is why we're also coming to, when we're in the full fifth dimensional quantum field, we're going to have access to actually communicate with all of these other beings again directly.
Thank you. Brilliant analogy again. Can you touch on the ley lines, grid lines, and dragon lines? Do you sense them becoming activated as well? Is there anything you want to share about that?
I do. And that's, so going back to what I said about the entire matrix of this universe, the entire grid lines. So we have ley lines and grid lines around the planet. So does the universe. Just imagine it on a larger scale, big spider web all around us that goes in everywhere, like a full 5D all the way around us. As we activate the ley lines and grid lines in Gaia, that activates the higher ones as well. So when and how did all the dragon information come through? I actually knew I had to go to the UK. I was drawn to Glastonbury, and I didn't know a lot about ley lines and dragon lines or anything at that point. I was taken to a place called the Paddington Farm Trust. I was looking for a place to stay, needed somewhere where I could be for several weeks to pull the book through. Didn't want to pay the price of a bed and breakfast because that would add up quickly, right? So I was in this little perfect tiny apartment room with a little kitchenette. I could be totally like on my own and not need to go out and just focus with the dragons. I came to find out later that it was 100 yards, 100 meters, say, from the dragon ley lines that runs through Glastonbury Tor. It was the closest place I could be to actually sleep in the energy of the line and be deeply connected. So why was that where I had to go? Of all the places on the planet, that because of the Avalon structure around it, because of all the King Arthur and the ongoing connection to that legend for people, it's kept it alive. It's kept the energies open. So I was able to connect there. So all of the Welsh and the Celtic, all of those countries that have dragon lore that is still alive, it's keeping those grid lines open to get the information through. So that line is definitely active. My task and what I've had come forward over time has been to realize there are large activation points on the grids where large intersection lines meet that I am called to go to physically, or now I go telepathically, because for some odd reason, before I was awakened, I traveled all over the world and I was in a lot of these places already. And because I've been there in this physical body, I can actually return there energetically like that to do the grid work now. It was great once COVID hit. It was like, oh, no problem. So that said, the larger grid lines are becoming more active. They are tied into all of the same, the Michael Mary lines, the Nilotic meridian that runs up through Africa. There are different terms for them. For me, they're all part of the larger energetic grid that is being held by the lions, or excuse me, by the dragons, being handed over to the lions, the feline, the winged, the winged lions that are coming in. They're taking over from the dragons. And so you're going to start feeling a crossover working with the dragons, where you may have feline dragon or lion energy come in and be a bit confused, like why is there a lion being on? I think it's very funny that my dragon kitty just walked in. I don't know if you could see him, but he just walked into the space right as we're talking about that. Very funny. So that grid, all of the ley lines and any work that individuals feel called to do, because when I wake people up and I show them like, and there's lots of videos, so I'm going to encourage your listeners to find my YouTube channel. If you can put the link on the video for them, it's in the bottom of my emails. They can also send me an email, araya@dragonwithin.com. And when I email back, it's got all the links to my Facebook group, to my YouTube channel, because in the YouTube channel for the last 4 years, a lot of what we've discussed is in there. You can search it by topic, search it by Elohim, search it by angelic realm, search it by Draco, reptilian, whatever, ley lines. And there's been talks about it. Great. Because when you look at some of the ways to see and recognize a dragon in the land, somehow your heart is telling you, I need to wake this dragon up, or I need to communicate with it. They are part of the grids. There are dragons in the lands, in the mountains, in the water, in nature, that have been embedded and are waiting for this time for us to recognize them and say hello and say, yes, I am open to communicating with you again, because they receded just like that dark energy walking away. They receded energetically, those that were actually on the planet physically. They receded and let their energy bodies just sink into the land, waiting for the time when humanity would be ready to embrace them and no longer hunt them and no longer be chasing them and pushing them away and calling them demons, right? So when you feel that, just listen to your heart. Light language will probably come out. You might not know what that is, but whatever stream of energy is coming through, let it come out verbally and vocally, hands-on, because you are being called to activate that part of the grid. And I'm one being, I'm in charge of a larger, who I be as dragon. But each of those that are connected to dragon can help get those grids online, where you are on the planet, where you're traveling on the planet, wherever you've been on the planet and feel called to go back to energetically. So the ley lines and grid lines are really important. And a lot of that is pretty close to being complete, because I've only recently, and it was literally last weekend, started communicating with the white lions who are in body on the planet, and the whole feline races that are taking over. They are the kings and queens that are here. The white lions down in South Africa and Timavati, they're bringing back. And so like, I'm starting that communication because the baton's going to be passed. So coming from the Council of Moon, being ready to transfer that over means we're in game. We are at the pivot point. We are at the precipice, ready to leap forward. And that's it. We're in super exciting times. Like, to be alive right now is just such a gift and so amazing. And to have, I'm getting full body goosies again. Everybody have the chance to wake up that dragon piece for them here and now.
Absolutely, yes. So I just want to echo your encouragement to go on Araya's YouTube channel and website and get the book and the cards. I had so many goosebumps, so many chills when I was reading your book, and I can't wait to get the cards as well. So all the links will be part of the video and the description.
I'm just going to show because they're so powerhouse.
They're stunning, and there's so much wisdom in them. Excellent. Thank you.
Oh, all these dragons are so excited. There's so many lineages right here present because of everybody that's connected to the different lineages. I can feel this massive band of dragons around. They're sort of having a celebration party. Like, they're really excited.
Really good. I just want to, for clarity, to answer the question, and it came through a few different people asked differently, but same concept. They say, when I see in my galactic astrology chart, if I see Thuban Draco or Etamin Draco or other stars in Draco, or seeing stars to star alignments to Sirius, Orion, Pleiades, does it mean that I have dragon connections or ancient dragon energy connections to that are linked to these star systems, or are they human connections? So as you kind of said it before,
so
it's a bit of both. It depends which way your brain connects to it and what you're ready to remember, right? Lower dimensions and higher dimensions.
It's what you're ready to remember, but you have to remember too that not all species are humanoid on those star systems. So depending on the star system, depending on the planet that you're incarnate within, you will have chosen a body type that is for a certain experience there. But if it's showing up in your chart here, to me, that represents that on a soul level, some fractal aspect of you is connected to that system, whether it's by memory that you need to remember, by having an aspect actually incarnate there, whatever the history is, it's a marker that's being brought into your awareness for you to remember and just make that connection to your larger self. Because what I've found is that the further forward I go in my journey of vibrational activation, the further back I actually have memory bank come in of conscious memory, conscious knowing of all the places I've been, of what was before this. Like, I actually got so far back that I had a memory of being in the room with all the dragon commanders and the dragon king. And it wasn't even a room, it was a space out in some universe somewhere, some realm. And I remember the moment that we all said, yes, as a whole, we unanimously agree we are going to take on this universe that's going to have this earth piece. We are going to be the keepers as this universe gets created. That moment of saying yes and being in that space, I couldn't have remembered that if I hadn't done all this other footwork to get vibrationally here. So the further forward you go, the more memory you're going to have come. Mm. And as you merge into self, like the whole point of my Dragon Heart program is to step into who you be. And what does that mean? It means really aligning to your fullness of your light body and getting to that place where you can merge and be connected to it, so that in every moment you have conscious awareness of every part of yourself that is still fractaled out somewhere in any part of the universe. You may choose to recuperate that energy back in, but you may choose to still leave it out there and just know what you are doing in Antares, or know what you're doing in Draco. And that's where we become multidimensional beings. That's where we remember that we are actually multidimensional. And not only does that mean that I've incarnated in those different places and different dimensions, but I am there now in this moment, because that's all outside of time. We're in the time-space continuum, but as we move out of that, have you noticed that in the last 2 years? How much more you're outside of the constraints of the timelines? My journey is all about that, like really coming into it. Time does not exist in many moments of my journey now, and we're bridging to where it doesn't exist at all. We're in that process, but it's super exciting.
Very multidimensional, absolutely. And so many people would message me as well, pointing to those types of experiences and being
Yeah.
able to perceive so many things at the same time. It's really, and like you get these downloads that are in a sphere, and it's hard to put it in linear language because it's all encompassing. Yeah, it's fascinating.
Exactly. And that's where I love that you brought that in, because everything is going spherical right now. Nothing's linear anymore. It's spherical. So that means you can feel like you're here, there, and everywhere, that your day can be here, there, and everywhere. Micro, macro, remember that. But you don't have to comprehend it all right now. Let it be present. And at the right moment, it will be there.
Exactly. I believe it's a side effect of the triple helix activation of the multidimensional DNA activation coming online. That's when you start perceiving reality that way. And it's super exciting. It's magical, isn't it?
Truly.
I'm just going to glance through the...
Yeah, let's make sure we have all your questions in.
One thing that comes to mind is, there's still so many stories out there about the wars and polarity, and we can really feed into that, but it feels like it's really no longer relevant. We can go and talk about what's still going on, what could be going on in the star system or that star system, who is taking over. I feel like it's just unnecessary entertainment of the history of the past. It's not really needed at this point. It's almost like a distraction code game that we better focus on here now, and how can we answer the guidance from within to keep upgrading ourselves and remembering and integrating and growing, expanding. Would you agree?
I would, absolutely. And there again, it's very interesting that this micro macro theme keeps coming in this discussion. So looking at that as, all right, the big wars, the big things on that global scale, on that universal scale, wherever they are, that's also in our own. And it's whether it's the dramas in our life and the storylines and this, all the dramas that can go on, are you feeding into them? Even with the information that comes, do you need to remember all of your past lives? No, you don't. What you need is to process the emotion that comes up, that is what's still holding in your energy bodies. And when the emotion gets processed, it vacates and it makes space for more light, which is love, which is information, which is that connection interdimensionally. And it's like, just allow that without needing the mind to have a story to it, to have any visuals to it. I know that the deepest processing I ever did in my shadow work was when I could get to the raw core emotion and just let it come out. It can be rage, that's ugly, can be grief, can be sobbing, can be, wow, so blown open with joy, like, whoa, let's let that be felt. But if we don't feel it fully, because what we haven't realized, and I think when you talked about this healing other systems, a big piece of this is there are a lot of players here from other systems, because Earth is the only place that has the emotional spectrum like we have. Other places don't have it. They have heart, but they don't have the same varied, like, rainbow of emotions. And what they're here to do is, when we move into the quantum field, when Gaia heals herself and we leap upward into really a harmonic community, a harmonic of community and communion with each other, that's a state of union on a greater than individual scale. It'll be individual first, but that's creating the new Earth. That template of community is coming from that harmonic that we are doing with lots of different cultures and interspecies on this planet. What I came to realize, that they showed me this maybe 6 months ago, a lot of the beings are coming from other systems that are working in union and communion as community, but they're only single species. It's very easy to work in community in your own species. They have sent emissaries to learn the broadness of cultural integrity and cultural intercommunication, because they want to take that back to their home system. Once they graduate from here, once they complete this incarnation, and we do this, we now have amplified through the multiverse the ability to have communion from interspecies.
Huge bomb, just
huge
explosion. Yes, big time.
Yeah.
Thank you. That never came through so clearly. That makes a lot of sense. why.
Yeah. It blew me away when I saw it. When they brought the information, I was like, ding, aha, excited to be able to share it.
I want to say the micro macro as well. I feel you may have channeled, you reminded me of something I completely forgot. My earliest kind of activations or realizations through meditation of my other aspects, early teens, whenever I close my eyes, I would see the macro micro. It was like I would become tiniest and infinite huge, and it was just growing in scale, and that's how my consciousness was expanding, and it was spontaneous in my childhood. It was nice to be reminded of that. Okay, one more question was here about the connection between serpent beings. Is there a connection to Dracos or dragons, or what's the connection?
Okay, so let's look at that, because there's the Draco and the snakes, right? Snakes, reptiles, that whole realm. So that's going to be in that energetic system. A piece here to look at is dragons are not reptilian. Okay, they are not, even when they were physically incarnate, they are not of a reptilian, just like the dinosaurs, they're avian species. A lot of people don't know that about the dinosaurs even. They were not reptiles. You can go to the Natural History Museum, the big one in DC, and there's even we got it here in Reno, there's a traveling thing. That's where I realized, I was like, oh my gosh, the dinosaurs are an avian species offshoot evolutionarily, biologically. So that said, there is a very big difference between snake and serpent beings, serpent in the dragon lineage. But why? Because the dragons don't take a single form. We often want to draw them or paint them as they've got 4 legs, they've got 2 wings, they've got this long neck, they've got this long tail. Well, no, dragons can be any form, from serpent, who moves in undulation through time and space, through elemental matter. So the earth dragons, they're serpentine in form. They corkscrew to move. There's a great movie, I want to say it's called The Dragon's Pearl, maybe. Actually shows that they animated it beautifully, of this gold dragon who was serpentine and moved like that. So the Chinese, the Asian dragons, very serpentine in form. They can have 2 legs, 4 legs, just the front, as in the front of the body, for F-O-R-E. They can have just hind legs. They can have both or neither. They can have no wings. They can have 2 wings. They can have 4 wings. I've seen 8 wings, and I've seen 8 sets of wings. That gives them hovering capacity. And actually, if you imagine a helicopter that had 8 rotors that didn't interfere with each other, but could allow movement literally in any direction in any moment, that's the dragons with the higher numbers of wing sets. They literally are that maneuverable as they drop into a more physical density. So the serpentine form is that, those dragon forms, like my water dragon. If I was to show you, I'm just going to put really quickly, if I stop my video and you see my water dragon form, and I apologize to the artist, I don't know the name of the artist, and I'm using that image on my screen, but that water dragon is serpentine form, but has 4 the front legs and small wings. That's the one that I have always associated most directly with when I drop into a more dense elemental format. That's the form I take. So it's a combination of winged, legged, and serpentine. And I've always, so you have this childhood memory. I always, when I was in the water as a kid, I was on swim team for 13 years, and then I was a scuba instructor later in life. The water is like freedom for me. I finally really understand that. But I would go in the pool and I would drop down underwater and I would undulate my body like in free form. And it'd be like the most blissful thing I could do. And I never understood it until now, looking back. And I realized, like, wow, that was my water dragon wanting to be just playful and come out and be there and remind me who I was.
Love that. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, what we are tapping here is the infinite possibilities of what can be with these beings. And I feel our human mind really wants to square things into box so we can be comfortable there, but there are no limits here, really, as we can see. So
yeah, and that's one of the mantras that the dragons have brought in for me to live by, is everything is possible. Don't put any limitations, belief systems, boxes around it. That's what 3D has done to you. And our ascension process is literally about having the dragons help us see the boxes, because a lot of times they're transparent. pull them off. What is that belief system from? Where's that structure from? That's a belief structure. If you believe it, you'll create it. If you believe that it's taken away and not there, then you won't be limited by it, because we are literally creating our reality.
Thank you for that reminder. Did we answer the question on how do we raise our inner dragon? Or as you said, when you're ready, when you start calling for it, it'll come and it'll start upgrading you. Do you want to add anything else to that?
Well, I would say, just to encourage, especially those that have the book, each of us coming through. So even humans that don't feel connected to the dragons, they don't like dragon stuff, they don't called to it. There are a lot of souls on the planet that are first and foremost ever created as a human soul. They're here, but because the dragons are holding this grid, they all have a womb dragon. There's all an energetic connection to the crystalline grid that is the core of this, the core of the earth, the core of this grid universe. And so that crystal ball that holds that womb dragon in it, at some point, they will recognize that it's about their inner power. You can look at it as that archetype and stepping into their truth of who they be when they're living that. So there's a whole section on the Womhara dragon in the book about that. And I would say, if you're waking up your inner dragon, I wouldn't worry so much about it unless you're like, feel this deep call to dive into your womb space. It's the Hara space for men, but literally we each have both. And when you dive into that space, to just open and feel in this darkness, where is the dragon? And you may see a crystal ball. You may see that dragon sitting there, blackish green, dark in color. Start communing with it, heart to heart. Wake it up. But whether you do that directly or not, when you work with the dragons externally and start shedding away all the layers that you feel are external, they're actually also internal. And you can't not do the external work and not have that also being drawn to you. Just crack that inner dragon open. And it's like one path leads to the other. It's spherical, so it comes back around into itself. So you can go either direction to really connect with that. You can go direct straight into the womb, into that inner space, or you can go external and get all this help from these dragon guides and guardians and beings, and you'll still get there.
Really good. Thank you. What comes to mind is the difference between dragon rider and dragon keeper. Would you like to comment on that briefly, please?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought back around to that, because that came up in the question of these other star systems.
Yeah.
So a dragon heart, for me, is a being that first and foremost soul incarnation is as dragon. They maintain that space as like, my heart is this big diamond that is the core of the dragon. That is where it's a diamond shaped Merkaba. It is a core of fire. That is the essence of a dragon heart. A dragon rider is actually one that has split itself almost like a twin flame split, where it's one and the same being, that it comes and it has a dragon format and it has a humanoid format. It doesn't have to be, though. I have now encountered dragon riders that have a unicorn counterpart with their dragon, others that have a lion and a dragon hybrid. So the dragon rider piece is just splitting into two fractals, two forms that stay connected at their base level. So if you had a branch coming off of your soul space and you had a fork down here, you could have a dragon rider experience, whether on this planet or on another planet, where one of the clients that I worked with had, and I don't know the name of the planet, they gave a number just so I could associate it, but they had their humanoid aspect and their dragon aspect, and the dragon was injured. Anytime that happened, the humanoid would actually automatically feel that as well, like, because they're so connected. If one dies, the other dies, and then they have to start over. So the dragon rider is an intentional splitting of your energy for whatever reason and whatever system. It's always about what we want to learn and experience. So the dragon in that situation was no longer welcome in these humanoid colonies. And so the human was there interfacing and trying to bring that back in, but wasn't being accepted. And so the dragon ended up being hunted and that piece left. But it's just a different experience of connecting with your soul level dragon energy. So both of them have dragon at the core on the soul level, but they can represent differently. And usually dragon riders are the type of soul that would commonly have that split of experience. Whereas like myself, I don't recall ever having a dragon rider incarnation or split like that.
Same here. Understood really well. Thank you. That was perfect. One more thing that comes to mind with that is spinal column and maybe pain in the spine. Have you come across that shifting as people activate the dragon?
You're going way back to my first experience with dragons. So I love that this is coming full circle. So way back in 2003 to 2005, when Metatron was the one that came in and I had my awakening, I was 36. And he literally came in my meditations every day to wake this piece up in me. And he started by being present in an angelic form and getting me to start sounding and doing energy work with people's auric fields and encouraging me to start working on people, on friends, on, you know, whoever I could do a trade with, whatever. And as that was happening, that's when the dragons showed up. People would come to me that had sciatica or specifically under the scapula, somewhere pain in their spine or their shoulders or their hips for months, for years, some of them, literally one session. And they were amazed because they were like pain-free. Like, what was that? And I said, you're going to freak out if I tell you, but quite literally there was a dragon in your spine and the hip or the wing was stuck trying to come out, or the tail was stuck trying to get out of the hip socket. Like you're trying to pull your tail out. But then, like, what do we do with that information? Mm. So that's where when you and literally you might need an external body worker or energy worker to help pull it out. But if you set your intention and say, look, I know this has to do with dragon, and you like get down on all fours and just start wagging your dragon tail and feeling it, or intentionally unfolding your wings, you might find that dissipate and realign itself just because you finally recognize like, wow, this is possible. And all right, I'm going to set my intention and see what happens, because it literally can be that fast.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. But I feel when that manifests, the issue of stuckness, it's just an echo of state of being for so long that also needs to be maybe somehow addressed with it. And then once it's released, you also release the emotional trauma that actually got you stuck that way. It's just an embodiment of how you have felt for so long.
Exactly.
And I have stuck leg or something. Yeah.
And I have experienced too, certain people have carryover. When you start connecting to some of the higher energies incarnationally that you're a part of, and any of your incarnational aspects in particular, if they are dragon, if they're wounded, have a spear in their back, have had their wings pinned, or their ankles or part of their wings chained to a wall, or they're in a cage, anything like that, as you wake up to those vibrational levels, you may start experiencing the actual manifestation of that in your physical body, in your cells, of feeling like, wow, why do I feel like I have this chain around my neck? Like, what is that? Or man, there's something in my hip. And I've worked with in session a lot of those situations where there's like this big lance in the dragon's spine, and going back to where that dragon is to pull it out, do the medical healing on it. And it's about finally making that connection to that aspect of self and seeing, all right, where is that and why is it hitting me here and now? Because all of our incarnations, we're still tied to them energetically. The soul lessons are all like, if I complete a soul lesson in another system, I'm going to complete it here, because whatever that was, I incarnate with all of my baggage, right? Mm-hmm. And as we go through the 0 point doorway, 0 point means no baggage. Mm-hmm. It means it's all done. It's a completion point, and we have an opportunity to go into a whole new set of circumstances for like zeroing out this universe experience, and the doorways will be open for, all right, what next?
I felt that once. Really, really good. There is one more question that we did not touch upon, if you don't mind, if you still have time, and that was, is this dragon energy awakening collectively have anything to do, is there a connection to the concept that Dolores Cannon shared, and so many people resonated with it, concept of the 3 waves of volunteers and souls coming here in such large waves, incarnating and helping with the ascension process? Can you see the link between the two?
Yeah, I haven't actually followed any of her stuff. I know that she predominantly was an angelic medium, or like bringing through that information and realm, and then moved into, because there was a need, some of the dragon pieces. But yes, there are waves that have come through, and whether it's waves of us coming incarnate in bodies through these generations, from the indigo to the millennials to the crystals now, definitely.
And diamonds now.
And diamonds now, yeah. My boys being born late in my journey has to do with that. Me being born, I'll admit I was born in 66, I'm 55, and was part of that first indigo wave of the real light word, the real like push through, stand for it, hold the line type of energy that is, definitely what's needed in these times. But I've seen the waves of light. I've seen the waves crashing, and the huge crest on the top of the wave of every light warrior arm in arm, and the dragons being on the top. But every other being of light, whether it's Pegasus or unicorns or Fae or all of the beings that are here, like filling in the gaps in between them. So just because they're the biggest doesn't mean they're the only or the most important. They hold a specific frequency, but as does each species of light beings that are here that are assisting, because all of us that volunteer, like all of that came in service to this realm, they're taking something back to their home system. There's always an exchange energetically. And that's not why they do it. They do it in service, but there's going to be that reward or that piece that they get to take back to their home system. And so the power of the intention, I just looked at my clock here in the States, I'm at 11:22, and we're talking about this. I find that powerful. So yes, there are waves of beings that have come in. As on the macro scale, there are waves of light being sent from the greater central sun, from Creator, Mother, Father, God, Source, that have been slowly reaching us since, I believe the first waves were in Edgar Casey's times in the early 1900s. 1987 being the next one, the harmonic convergence. If you don't know what that is, Google it, go look it up. That was a turning point when all of a sudden there's channelings. Everybody's channeling information. Why is that? Because this big wave of love came from our greater central sun to kick in the next phase of the process. Then we had another one in 2018, and it's progressively been getting quicker and quicker. That's a quickening, right? We're quickening to, yes, there's more waves, and there's more waves of beings coming in at, how many did we have? Like 3 decades of indigos? And
Sure.
It hasn't taken that many decades of incarnational beings to get to the diamonds from the crystals, right?
Yeah.
It's a quickening, and they're able to come now because we've raised the vibrational level enough, and there's beings, parents, who can hold the vibration for that incoming soul where they want to maintain the vibration being born. They don't want to drop down to total forgetfulness. They want to be in a body that can hold it. So that can be, and even, the use of a lot of beings coming through the crystal skulls or the Andaras, those are higher frequency beings that don't want to take the time to incarnate in a body. They don't want to drop dimensionally that far. They want to maintain and just add their vibration. So there's a lot of light coming in through lots of different mediums.
It's fascinating. I think it's so extraordinary that we, with our human brain, with our physical body, we can experience complete, absolute fragmentation of source, when even with your mind, you can focus on just one little tiny detail of this universe. And then at the same time, we can zoom back to absolute unity. Such extraordinary times, for sure. Amazing time to be alive. Well, Araya, thank you so much. It was such a powerful download. I felt you coming in with your mighty energies even before I started getting that headache. It shifted completely as we connected. It came in down. Now it's at the back of my spine, like a big lump, and I can't wait to then bring it in after we call and really integrate this. It was really, really incredible. Thank you so much for for your work and for your dedication and commitment, and your personal shifts and sharing this. Because am I correct in saying that at the beginning it wasn't easy for you to talk about this stuff, right? And do you find it, how was that for you? Because I'm attracting many people who are going through that shift of leaving maybe the corporate world or doing completely different reality game, and suddenly finding that courage to start talking about different kind of stuff. How was that for you?
I'll tell you what, and I love that you're bringing that in, because that's one of the biggest parts of the journey when you start with the dragons. There's going to be a piece that a lot of us have about really stepping into our power and being visible. Because for me, I wrote the book in fall 2007. I put it out in 2008. I was working with them since like 2004, 2005. But then I put them on the back shelf. I had my own integration to do. And then when they came, and in 2018, it was 2017, it started, and said, it's time to go full time. This is needed. This is now. And here's moving forward. And it's like this big call. Like I couldn't do anything else. And put this program together. And I had to work with a coach the year before that. I was drawn to her, like amazing circumstance, how my guides brought me into her sphere and she into mine, and like crazy story. But because of my connection to her on a higher angelic soul level, she helped me break open the piece and finally see it, be willing to see it, that I was terrified, absolutely terrified to stand up in front of anybody and claim I was a dragon, because they were going to shackle me. They were going to put me back in a cage and they were going to shackle me again. I was like, I'm not going there. And so when I finally could see that and heal it and release it, then boom, literally the doors flew open. I had my first Dragon Heart program. It's been 4 years of that. And it's like unreal how it comes forward. And it's that, can you face that fear that is holding you back from your power? And that's where we're working with the Black Dragon in particular. And Michael will help you see, like, what is my block? What is like holding me back from really stepping into that? Is it because I'm going to get wounded? Am I going to have all of my legions enslaved? Am I going to be caged myself? Am I going to be burned and tortured? We all went through something different. But if we can unlock it, all of a sudden you're going to find like no holds barred. Whoa, watch me fly and create. It's unbelievable how it shifts. And that's, I don't do as many one-on-one sessions as I used to, but all of my programs, my book clubs, my quantum flight, the one-on-one sessions I do, anything that you might feel you need assistance to move through, send me an email, reach out, or even if it's a question, somebody finishes listening to this and they have another question pop in, email it to me, because I do those on my lives every week. That will help hundreds of people, if not thousands. And it's like, get those out there, whatever's coming up. I'm here in service. So send me the question. If it's a really personal thing and we need to do a session, I can get you connected to that. But there's ways to work through it. And that is one of the things I do, is that mediumship piece to connect soul to soul, feel your dragons, who's around you, let your soul communicate what's holding you back right now. What's the biggest thing blocking you right now? And whether you need a human interface to do that, or you can just say, all right, open the book. All right, this is how I call in the Black Dragon, and trust it. And don't be surprised if more than one dragon shows up, because they're working in teams now. They're like, all right, it's time to really expedite things. And you might have a whole lineage show up where the Black Dragon is there, and then Obsidian steps in right behind to bring it up a notch already. They're working like that now.
So powerful. And your lives are on Facebook on Tuesdays, is that right?
Yes, Tuesdays, 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So here, West Coast time in the United States. I rarely come on right at 11. It's always dragon time. Sometimes it's 11:11. Sometimes, I come in and it's just perfect, and everybody finds that they get it later.
The reality in Ireland as well. I'll be there in a few minutes. Yeah, half an hour later. See ya.
Yeah, but that is the group on Facebook is for the love, capital LOVE of dragons. Apparently there are 2 for the love of dragons groups. I didn't know that was possible to create 2 with the same name in Facebook, but it is a capital LOVE for the love of dragons. And you'll see, my face on there to know it's the right group.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. This was such a gift. You're so generous with your offerings. Maybe we'll do something like this again in the future. What?
I love talking about dragons, so we could go on probably all day, but we can't always do that.
Excellent. Well, have a great integration, everybody, as you start working with this. Much love to y'all. Take care.
Absolutely. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.